Okay, so this will be about quickly identifying first blocks in inspection. So first, some terminology. This is a block. Pairs are doubles of connected pieces. So if I just do this, I'll have a pair here with the edge connected to the center, and two corner edge pairs like this. Lines are triples of connected pieces. So if I do that, this is a line, and this is a line. This last type I call a disjointed pair. It's where you have a pair like this, but it's one move away from being solved. The main difficulty of first block, especially when you're just starting out, is that it's such a free step, and you can often get sort of lost because you don't really know where to start in terms of block building. And I think the way to counteract this is to develop a tool set of different ways of building the block. And in your inspection, what you'll look for are signs that certain approaches are better than others, or more efficient than others. And that's how you'll start to be able to see blocks really quickly, and be able to come up with nice efficient blocks. So what I'm going to do is I'll first describe each approach, so you can get the general sense of it, and then I'll give 3 examples of scrambles taken from an average of 200 that I did this morning to sort of showcase these approaches. So the first approach I'll talk about will probably be most familiar to people who are coming from a CFOP background. What essentially you do is you first solve this DL edge, and then you place one F2L pair to make a square, and then you place a second F2L pair to make a block, like that. So for this first example, we have this yellow-red edge in place, which we will treat as our DL edge. Now when you see this and you're inspecting, you want to begin looking for the 2 F2L pairs that will constitute the rest of the block. So in this case, they're this pair here, and this pair here, these two. So there are 2 ways you can solve this block. The first way is to pair these 2 directly, like this, and place this down, and then pair the second one. But a better way to do this is to first pair this block like this with this edge, because that sets up this pair to be inserted like this. So for this next scramble, you have the orange-white edge solved, and you can treat this as DL. So now look for your other pairs. There's one here, these 2 pieces, and there's one here, like this, these 2 pieces. So what you can do to solve this is you can first solve blue-orange by doing this, and that places this one here and this one here, which you can solve like this, to pair them in the back, and then do that. So for this last scramble, you see that the green-yellow edge is solved, so you treat this like DL. Your pairs are here and here. If you solve this pair first, it'll set up this one nicely. So what we're going to do, your DL is here, and we're going to do like this to put this in, to make the square, and this last pair showed up here, which is a disjointed pair, which can be placed like that. So I use this CFOP-y approach to solving the first block most when I can't see a free pair like this or like this in inspection. And if that's the case, I'll try and look for DL edges like this, or I'll talk about how to make use of pairs like this later on. And what happens is I'll try and attach 2 pairs and use some tricky influencing or something to reduce the move count. The main downside to this method, obviously, is that it's not immediately efficient to use, an edge and then a corner edge and then a corner edge like this. So if you can't really do something interesting or special with the pairs, your block will end up at around 10 to 11 moves. So this next approach I call F2L pair first. And what happens is you see an F2L style pair like this, and you find the DL edge that needs to go with it, which is right here. And then you make a square by connecting them together, and then you find your last pair and you attach it to make a block. You have this very obvious F2L pair here, and it can either go with a green-white edge or an orange-white edge. So the green-white edge is here, and since they're close together, you know that it'll be awkward to work around. So we'll dismiss this idea and try and look for the orange-white edge. The orange-white edge is here, and this happens to be in a great position because a D2 will solve it. So we'll make this square by doing D2U to line this up, and then this to place like that, and the last pair here and here can be solved like this. So for this scramble, you have this F2L style pair here, and this DL edge already formed, so this very easily comes into a square. And then your last pair is right here, so you can first attach this pair like this, and then you can place this pair over here by doing this, and then your last pair, which is up here, like this, to make the block. So for this scramble, you have an F2L pair here, and you can attach it pretty easily to the white-green edge, this one, by doing this, center here, and edge here, so like this, to attach the edge to the center, and then this to attach the pair to the edge to make a square, and then this pair like this to make the block. So this method is nice because once you see this free F2L pair, and once you see maybe a square that takes 3 or 4 moves, you're pretty much guaranteed to have a 7 to 8 move block, which is great. The only downside I would say is don't get stuck trying to force the pair to work. If both of the edges that might make the pair into a square seem awkward, you need to know when it's time to just ditch the idea entirely and go with something else, some other pair or edge. Otherwise you'll end up wasting inspection time, and that will really ruin the solve. So these next two approaches are going to be very similar to the previous two approaches. Instead of solving a pair like this first and then adding pairs, or instead of having this free pair first and adding pairs, we'll start with a pair like this and add pairs, or we'll start with a pair like this and add pairs. I'm going to call these the line-based approaches to building squares. To me, a line in this sense is like a horizontal block. I only make this distinction because while technically it's basically the same thing, you're attaching a edge and a center to a corner edge pair, the moveset that you use to insert these pairs is very different. So for an F2L style pair like this, if it's right here, I might insert it like this, something like that. But if I have this edge down here and this pair over here, I'm going to be using D moves, or I'm going to be using U wide moves, stuff like that. So I've categorized it in a different section. So first I'll go over the line block approach to building a square. So first you'll take a corner edge pair that belongs on D. So I see that this is white, so this pair has to end up on the D face like this. And you attach it to an edge and a center to make a square like this. And then you find the last F2L style pair and you insert it to make a block. So for this scramble, I see this line block already built, and the piece that I need to complete this square is I need the blue center and I need the blue-orange edge. And this blue center is here and this blue-orange edge is back here, which means the square is very easy. I just do that like this. And then this last pair happened to be there, that's just very lucky. So the rest of the block is like that. So for this second scramble, we have a line block here, and the edge that needs to go here, and the center that needs to go with this edge is over here. And our last pair are blue, orange, white edge, and corner is here. So first we can make the square like this to make the square, and then this for the last pair. Connect them like that and place them like that to make the block. Okay, so this example is a bit fancier. There's going to be some pair influencing. Now, I have two line blocks to choose from, this one and this one. This one, the square, can be made with these two pieces, this edge which needs to go there, and this center which needs to go there. And that would actually be done in 3 moves pretty easily, like this. But then that leaves this awkward pair, so I'm going to go and look at the other line edge, and the other line block, sorry. So the other line block is here. Now the edge that needs to go with it is right here, and the center that needs to go with this edge is right here, which looks a little bit awkward, but you can also see that this last pair is right here, and you know it's the last pair because it has 2 blue pieces and it has a yellow corner piece. So then you can flip this edge and attach it to the center while making this into a disjointed pair. So I'll show that now. It can be done like this. This is your block. I'll hold it like this. So now I have this attached, and this is a disjointed pair. See, if I just did a D move, it would be paired. So then I attach this line to this line to give me a square, and this last pair like this to give me a block. Very similar to the F2L style pair approach from before. It has the same advantages. If you can find an easy square, you're guaranteed a nice efficient block, but also don't get lost trying to force easy squares from the free pair that you saw, because often that will waste inspection time. So this next approach I call E-line based squares, and I call it an E-line because you use a mini line block on E. So what happens is, first you have this line, and then you make a pair that goes down here like this, and then you attach it to make a square, and then you attach the last F2L pair to the square to make your block. Okay, so for E-line based squares, essentially what you do is you find an E-line like this, and then you treat it as if it were DL, and you pretend you're color neutral and you solve with green on bottom, and then you look for the F2L style pairs that you would have to attach to make a square. So here, if I treat this like it's DL, then I have this F2L style pair here, and I have this F2L style pair here. The easiest one to do in this situation is this one, because one move will pair the two together. So I'll just go ahead and do that, pair, and then insert the pair like this, so now I have a square. And now I'm looking for my last pair, which is these two, so they just come in like that to make the rest of the block. So once again, the approach is to, you have your E-line, you're going to pretend you're a blue on bottom solver, and you're going to look for the F2L pairs that could attach to this DL edge to make a block. So first you have this corner and this edge could come in here, or you could have this corner and this edge could come up here. Now this corner edge pair is much easier because I can solve it like this first to pair them up, and then like this to make the square. And then the last pair right here, these two pieces, can be solved like this and this to make the rest of the block. Once again, look first at the E-line. I know there's DL here, but I'll just do the E-line for now since we're in the E-line section. So pretend you're a red on bottom solver and look for red pairs that would make the rest of this block. So that's these two could come together to make a nice one, and this one and this one. These two pieces can come together to make a nice one. Now I'm going to do the second one, these two, because they make a nice block if you solve it from the right orientation. So what you do is you take this corner and you move it up like this, so it's here, and then you move it like this, and now you'll see that this is a disjoint pair, and then do this to pair them, and then this to put the square in like that. And then you have the rest of your block, which is here and here, which you can just solve like that. So this approach is good for the same reasons that solving DL and two pairs is good. It gives you something to fall back on when there aren't any free pairs like this or like this. You can make use of this thingy right here and attach a pair like this or this, and then you can make blocks off of that. The only downside is, the same downside as when you solve DL and then two pairs. If you don't really do much influencing, or if you don't find lucky cases, then you'll end up with pretty long blocks. Like, for example, that last example solve was maybe 9 moves. I think if I had added a pre-move in the beginning, it could be 7. But regardless, if you don't see things like that, you're going to get inefficient blocks. So these last two approaches don't come up very often in solves, but they're very fun to do if you happen to get a nice case. So I figured I would talk about them anyway, because they do come in handy every so often. So these are the line-based blocks, so you'll have a triple like this and a triple like this, and you'll put them together like this. So you can do this in two ways. First, you could make this line block and then attach this E line, or you could first make this E line and then build this line block and then put them together like that. I'll first give 3 examples where you build a line block like this and then bring in the E-slice edges like this, and then I'll give 3 examples where I build the E line first and then I bring in the line block like that. So for this first example, we have this line block right here, and once you see a line block, you want to look to see if the centerpiece that goes here and the 2 edges fit together nicely. And the approach you want to take to doing this is, first you want to pair up the center with one of the edges, and then you want to use wide R and U moves to pair up the last edge with this 2x1 pair to make a 3x1 line, and then you want to do a U wide 2 to pair it to make the block. So we already have a center attached to an edge in this case, which is very nice, and our last edge is up here. So what you can do is you can use R wide and U to force this edge into here to make a line, and you can do that by doing this. So now we have a line like this. Now what you want to do is you want to do an R turn so that the color on the front of the line is opposite of the color on the front of the line block. That way, when you do a U wide 2, it'll form the rest of the block correctly. For this second example, we have a line block right here, and we have a center already connected to an edge here, and our last edge is up here. So, first what we can do is we can get this into the R slice by doing this. Then we can use R and U to get this connected to this like this. So now we have a 3x1 line. And then, since this is green, we want to adjust the R slice so that it's blue in front, and then do a U wide 2 to make the rest of the block. For this last example, you don't have a line straight away, but if you see these 2 corners right here and this edge right here, if I just go ahead and do an S prime, I'll get a nice line like this. And then I have this edge and this center connected together, and my last edge is over here. So first I'll get this line onto the R slice by doing this, and I'll do this to keep this over here. Then I'll use R wide and U to place this next to this to make a 3x1 line. So I can do that like this. So now I have a 3x1, and then I want to adjust the R slice so that it's orange in front because this is red. So now I have opposite colors here and here, and I do a U wide 2 to finish off my block. We'll move on to the examples where an E line is built first, and you have to construct a line block to build the rest of the first block. So when you get an E line like this, what you want to look for are the 3 pieces that'll build this line or the 3 pieces that'll build this line. So in this scramble, those 3 pieces are here to build the white block, or here to build the yellow block. See. In this case, the white block is easier, and the general approach is similar to when you have a line block. So when you have a line block, you want to pair 2 pieces together and then sort of solve the last one with a bit of a restricted moveset. In this case, we're going to pair 2 pieces together, and then we'll keyhole in the last one, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So first we have these 2 pieces which pair, pretend you're solving on green cross, and this is the F2L's D color. So what you can do is you can do this. This is all happening on the D face to make this pair. So from the perspective of solving, the solving orientation, it would look like this to make this square. And then this last corner, you want to just keyhole it in like this, see, to make the rest of the block. So for the second example, you have a green E line. So you want to look at triples of pieces again. So there's this piece and this piece and this piece, which can go together to make a line, but look like they're kind of awkward. So I'll look at the other triple, which is this piece, and this piece. Now right away, this actually pairs these two, so that's really nice. So what I'm going to do is I'll pair these two like this to make two together, and then what I'll do is I'll keyhole in the last one like this to solve the corner. And then I have two lines, and I'll just connect them like this to solve the rest of the block. Okay, so for this third example, we have this E line, this green E line once again. So we look at our triples. The first triple is here, here, and here. And it's a bit problematic because they can't really come together in a way that works. So these two can be paired like this. But then once they're paired, they're actually in the wrong way. So they can't really be joined up to the E line. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the white triple instead. So we have this piece, we have this piece, and we have this piece. So what will happen is these two actually go together really nicely. If I pretend I'm solving with red on bottom, I can see that this is a really good F2L case. If I just do this, that pairs the two. And then I just do this. So to place this line on D, and then with a D2 it'll be in like that. So now I have this, and then I can keyhole in this corner by taking it out of the D layer like this, and now it's up here, and then adjusting this partial line block so it's here, and then placing it like that. So I have it right here. I'm going to pull it out, I'll move this line over, and then I'll place the corner in. And then the rest is just lining up the lines to make the block. So it's very rare that you'll actually be able to use this approach in solves, but if you do happen upon like a 3x1 line like this and you get a nice block, then it can be really satisfying to do this sort of stuff. It feels very different from the pair building and square building that you'll do with the more standard approaches. The move count actually isn't too bad. Usually you'll get around 8 to 9 moves, 7 to maybe 6 to 7 if you have a nice case. Just be careful once again, you know, if you see like a huge 3x1 line, don't try and force it, because if you spend too much time in inspection trying to make something work that won't work, then you'll end up wasting time and you won't be able to get a good first block. Okay, so that about wraps up all the various strategies that you can employ to make a first block. Now I'll talk briefly about how to use all this information in inspection. So the way I like to think of this is in flowchart form. So what happens is you're given a scramble, right? You're given a scramble and you're trying to get first block. And what you'll do is you will look for different attributes in the scramble, and then that will determine your actions. So if you see any 3x1 lines, you can, look for maybe a line block plus line, and then make a first block that way. But if you don't, if you see any 3x1 E lines, then you can look for lines that way. And if you don't see any of those, if you see any corner edge pairs, then you can look for how to make squares. And if you don't see any corner edge pairs, if you see any edge center pairs, then you can either use DL and two F2L pairs, or you can use the E line strategy to build a square that way. And if you don't see any of those, then you can look for any disjointed pairs, and you can make one move to pair them, and then you can go back to where you had a free pair and try and create squares that way. And if you don't see any of those, then you can basically panic, find a DL edge, solve it, and do the rest F2L style, which is basically what I do for really bad scrambles. But the general idea is if you have this sort of structured approach when you're inspecting, and you can look for maybe different attributes of the cube, different lucky aspects of the scramble, then you'll have better luck in finding efficient first blocks. So shortly after I'd finished writing up that flowchart and recording various segments for this, I became curious about when exactly these strategies would be employable. So I did an average of 50 where I recorded whenever a scramble had a free corner edge pair and whenever a scramble had a free edge center pair. And what I found was that 88% of scrambles would have a free edge center pair and 66% of scrambles would have a corner edge pair. And together, there is a 96% chance that you'll get either an edge center pair or a corner edge pair. Obviously, it's a pretty small sample size, but it sort of goes to show that these strategies are very reliable, and if you have all of them at your disposal, you'll pretty much always be able to find a nice first block. I think it's also worth mentioning that for those scrambles where I didn't have a corner edge pair and I also didn't have an edge center pair, the move count for the first square was 4, and there were only 2 of them. So yeah, that about wraps up this video, and hopefully it was helpful.